Shop Chat!
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here on Shop Chat, we love to interview quartets and performers, but we also understand that none of us can enjoy the hobby of barbershop without the administrative infrastructure of the organizations that we're members of, like Sweet Adelines and Barbershop Harmony Society and also Harmony Inc. And today we have one of the people who is really one of the key cogs in that administrative machinery that enables so many of us to enjoy the hobby of barbershop. We have with us today the president of Sweet Adelines International, Ms. Patty Cobb Baker. Patty, thank you so much for joining us here on Shop Chat.
Good to be here, Shane. Thank you for asking.
So, first question, when did you become president and how long is your term?
I became president on May 1st of this year. I was president-elect for 2 years prior to that, so I was kind of president in training. Became president on May 1st, and the elected term by the board, and the board elects the president, is 1 year. Traditionally, if you haven't done just a really lousy job, they will reelect for a second year, because a year is really a very short time to get a lot of things accomplished that you might want to do. So in general, it ends up being two terms of 1 year each.
And when does that decision made typically?
At our March annual board meeting. That's when the officers are elected. Each March.
I see. Now, my experience in barbershop has been that you either have people who are really artistic and skilled musically, but not so gifted at administrative stuff, or vice versa. And yet, noticing your biography, both in your professional life and also in your barbershop life, in addition to being a very accomplished and gifted singer and performer, you're also a very skilled administrator. And I'm just curious, what in your background has equipped you to be able to handle both of those roles?
Well, I guess some of it probably is just, personality and what you think. When I was in college, I struggled pretty much all 4 years to try to figure out who do I want to be? What do I want to be when I grow up? And all that kind of stuff, picking a major and all those things. And I loved, at the time, of course, I loved music, but I had to have a job that I felt was going to pay the bills and take care of, so I could take care of myself. So my dad had worked for the Veterans Administration, was a federal employee for his entire career. And I thought, well, I love history, I love political science, I love all of those things. Let's see, what can I do in that field and get a good job there. So I ended up majoring in public administration in college, which is kind of a double major of political science and general business. And then I got a fellowship and went on and got my master's in the same thing. And right out of grad school, I got an internship with NASA.
Wow.
Yes.
So now, you're from Texas?
I'm from Houston originally.
Where did you go to school?
I went to a small state college in East Texas called Stephen F. Austin State University. And then I got my graduate degree at the University of Houston.
I see.
Yes.
Very good. And then right from there, right into NASA.
Right into NASA,
What did you do at NASA?
So I came in as what they call a program analyst, which has nothing to do with like computer programming or anything, which sometimes people think when I say program analyst. At NASA they have different programs, like the shuttle program, they had the Apollo program, before that the Space Lab program, and now the Space Station program, and all these other different programs. And I became an analyst for the Space Shuttle program, and my first job was in the small area of the shuttle program called payload integration, which had to do with anything that had to do with putting things into the payload bay of the space shuttle that would go up into space on the shuttle. Any kind of experiment and that kind of stuff. My job was to analyze the cost of what that was to put. So I was basically a cost analyst mostly, and then I became the business manager for that entire contract after several years with the aerospace company that did that work. And then over time, I moved on to space exploration programs, going back to the moon and Mars. Early versions of that. We're still working on that.
Right.
NASA's still working on that now. Then space station program. I moved into that when they did a whole redesign of that program. Actually, I worked for a very short time on a program for the Assured Crew Return Vehicle. There was a really big program that they were going to do to bring all of our astronauts back in case of an emergency from the space station. And then Congress looked at it and said, that's going to cost too much money. So now they come back on Soyuz space capsule that's
like
what
the old
days.
days.
So we worked with the Russians for a little while. I learned a couple of words in Russian and things like that. It was all very, very, very interesting.
Well, that's interesting. So it's almost like you were doing the inventory and shipment and distribution, which could have been for any number of companies.
Yes.
But it just turns out to be like the most cool thing in the world.
The coolest thing in the world. It was a really interesting place to work. Really
now, who was the most famous person at NASA you met while you were there?
I met a Mercury astronaut, Alan Bean, who was, I was a member of the American Society for Public Administration, and I actually organized an entire celebration and acknowledgement and recognition award, public service award for him, and he was really cool.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Now, I'm interested as you now bring...
I said that wrong. It's not Alan Bean. It's Alan Shepard.
Oh, Alan Shepard.
Yes.
Right. Gotcha.
I'm getting old.
That's all right.
A long time ago.
So,
Alan Shepard.
as you have come now to... of course, you've done a lot of administrative things at Barbershop with choruses and then with regions in Sweet Adelines in general. But now, bringing some of that background and those skills to bear as president, have you consciously thought about what are some things you picked up at your time at NASA that you've kind of brought with you to the table as president?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm kind of known for at the board table is budget management. So I did a lot of budget work as well in my analyst world. I was in charge of. This is pretty funny. So, like when you put something in the payload bay of the shuttle, you would get some standard services. NASA would provide for you, for the cost of flying you up into space, X, Y, and Z. However, just like when you buy a car, you could get some optional services.
Yeah.
And so I did all the cost analysis for what all of those things would cost and what those optional things were. And I put together a book on that, a pricing book on that. And so, and then when we would put together budgets for every particular thing that would fly on the shuttle that NASA was flying, or sometimes the Air Force, sometimes foreign governments, I would put those budgets together. And so I come to the table at the board not afraid of spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets, And so when the budget's being worked on and anything that has to do with cost, I'm kind of the person that they all kind of go, what do you think?
Sure.
I love digging into it.
And of course, for us civilians, we tend to think of any federal government program as, budget and money is no object. But of course, it's obviously not the case.
Not true.
Because you're dealing with so many political and bureaucratic variations. But to bring that to bear on a nonprofit organization, just even that much more.
Yeah, and really, really, really crucial at a time when members who are on the board and on all the member-driven committees that we have so many ideas that we want to do and things that we want to implement to grow the organization and benefits for our members, and we have to we all just want to go do them as board members. Yes, approved, and it's sort of like, well, wait. We only have this many staff, or we have this much money, from our different revenue sources, and we need to really look at what kind of manpower does this require? What kind of materials? We need to look at all of that. So we got to lay it out in a schedule. So I'm the one who kind of goes, wait. What impact is that going to have on our staff to do that? They've already got all these jobs already.
Now, you sure you sing tenor? Because that sounds more like a baritone personality.
I am tenor, baritone, rising. It's been proven many, many times without dispute. I couldn't sing it though.
Who would ever want to try to do that? So let's say 25 years from now, somebody does a retrospective on Sweet Adeline Incorporated presidents. What would you want them to say? What would you hope the Patty Cobb Baker administration? What would be noted for? What do you want to bring? What are your top priorities as president?
I think, and I think every president who comes in sort of has, it's not really a platform, but they do kind of have an area that they feel that they want to focus on, and it seems to be time driven. You know, what's going on at that time in the organization. And for me, I've always thought it's got to be membership growth, you know, helping us find the ways to make us not the best kept secret in the world, and the ways in which we can really tout the benefits of being a member of Sweet Adelines. But then again, I think there's another aspect of what I need to be doing at this time. I think that we are really at a tipping point. Some of it has been driven internally, some of it is being driven externally to the organization. But we're at a tipping point in changes need to be made. And I hope that I can be a leader that leads us effectively through the changes that need to happen in our organization at this time to make us relevant in today's world.
Sure.
Or to help us be, instead of make, that seems a little forced, to help us be more relevant to any woman singer who is out there in today's world, in today's society, in today's environment. And so I really hope that I can define what those changes are with our leadership, and help us to find the steps to lead us through that, so that we come through it in a way that sets us up well for the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, this summer, just before the men's international contest, the Barbershop Harmony Society announced that it was going to change its terms of membership to allow women to be members of the BHS as well. And this has been discussed as a possibility for some time, but what was your message that you wanted to convey to your membership after that announcement was made?
Well, the main thing, and you know, I was obviously in contact with my CEO, who was also on the call with Marty, and then our board and everything, to let them know everything. The message was, we had done a survey in April of 2017, and we had asked the very specific question: how do you feel about having men in Sweet Adelines joining as members in Sweet Adelines? How do you feel about it? And the results came back that 53% of our members wanted to stay all women. And then there was like a fairly large, I want to say it was like 23%, 27%, I can't remember the number right now off the top of my head, that were just kind of neutral about it. And then the remainder was in favor, 18% or something like that. And so the message was, this is what you told us. That BHS is making this announcement, and now this is what you told us. So their decision and their announcement and how they're moving forward isn't going to change what we're doing at all at this time. We just wanted to calm everybody down, because we knew the first things were, oh my God, what does this mean to us? Are we going to merge with BHS? Or are we going to start letting them in? What is this? No, everything is. Right now, we are pursuing our vision and our mission, which is what it has always been. We will always. The other message was, we will always be keeping our finger on the pulse of what our members want.
Sure. And
what the marketplace is saying, what needs to be, So not to worry,
Yeah.
And that we are listening to you. We want to know what you want and all of these things. We know that there are members who would like it, but right now, this is pretty much a democracy, and but the majority rules. Okay, that doesn't mean that we're not going to always continue to think about what our future is going to be. Hence why, and our visioning retreat and all of that was happening long before the men's announcement, where we're looking at our future and where we're going. Like I said, we're in a time of change, and we need, but we got to ask our members. In my opinion, they're the ones who drive who we are and what we want and what we want to be.
Sure.
So, and that's basically what we said. And then we sent another email out to our leaders who might get additional questions.
Right.
And we said, here's what's happening. We're going to have the visioning day, and so if you get other questions that might go a little bit deeper, here's a little bit more information for you to help you answer those questions. So.
Gotcha. So suppose that you hop in the elevator here at the hotel where we're at, and there is a young lady in the elevator, and you strike up a conversation, and you realize she has an interest in singing. So you get to give your elevator speech now. There are a lot of different options for barbershoppers now, but I want you to give your best elevator speech for what you think are the really cool things that Sweet Adelines uniquely offers.
Well, first of all, I would let that person know that today Sweet Adelines is the largest women's singing organization on the planet. And we, I believe, are the premier educators of women barbershop singers in the world. We have taken the art form of barbershop and figured out how it best works in women's voices, which is very different from men's voices. And don't get my baritone, talking right now, or we'll never get out of here. About why. But we really do. We have thought long and hard for almost 75 years now about how it's different, how the music that we sing, which may be the exact same chart, but how it has to be arranged for women's voices to highlight the strengths of our voices. But the thing that is also there, so we provide this. We have the most outstanding faculty within Sweet Adelines that know how to teach it and know how to also teach women in the arranging of it for women and all of those things. But that's the other side of it, is that we're a women's organization. I never in a million years, when I walked through those doors in 1983 to sing, that I'd be sitting here today and that I would have learned the things that I have learned about myself as a person, my strengths, the areas in which I need to improve, and who I can become as a woman and as a leader in the world. It just is a fact that when women work together, they find ways to make us better people. That those opportunities aren't aren't available in the mixed, gender world. I can remember working at NASA, and I was competing against men in a dominated organization for promotions to managerials, and I'm not sexist, I don't. But in 1990 something, when I was working for this, if there were 5 men up, you just look at the statistics,
right, and
then there were 2 women, usually the men. And that was in an organization where equal employment opportunity was promoted. Mm-hmm. It was a tough world out there for women and those opportunities. You don't find it in an all women's organization. Women are there to lift women up. And so you take those skills from here and you can then translate them into that role. I learned things about public speaking. I learned things about, I always did presentations back then, but I had classes in Sweet Adelines.
Right.
Very inexpensive classes, if not free, on how to become better at that. Yeah. Things about just being, because we are a small business, every chapter is its own small business, every region is its own small business. You learned about those skills as to how to make it run well. You learn all of those things. You learn, whatever you want to be in Sweet Adelines, you can be promoted in how to do that. And it's not always possible in real life. So that is the thing that I think is the most unique and the most. You come for the singing and you actually find out who you are as a person. I say that one of the things through quartetting, the thing that I've learned most through quartetting is how to be in relationship with other people.
Yeah.
How to be a better friend, how to be a better partner, how to be all of those things, how to be a better team member. You learn all of these things in Sweet Adelines, and you learn it. You see women who you want to be, role models, who you want to be. You get role models from men too in organizations. I had one of the best bosses who was a guy who I learned so much from him too. But it's just different when you learn it from a sister.
Sure. And it's, I think, the same. I think most guys in BHS feel exactly the same way about the brotherhood and the fraternity of that.
Yes.
And it doesn't take anything away from the blessing of mixed barbershop.
Absolutely not.
But there are some unique blessings that I think makes the more of that, the better it is for all of us.
And I love mixed singing. I did that. We had a group out in California that we put together called Voca. I don't know if you ever got to hear us.
Yeah.
We sang at Men's International several times because we were all there. And oh man, there's nothing like it. I mean, do it. Absolutely do it. We didn't want to compete. I'm glad there's an organization that helps people who do want to do that competitively to do that. So I just want I believe everyone should be in harmony. I really do believe that. But I also think there's niches that also have their special contributions to specific aspects, and those are great too.
And I think as long as all of us in barbershop are working toward that objective, it can only be good.
I just think that we all just have to work together. And it is true now. We've always had competition for our members, with Harmony Inc. And now there's just going to be another one. And I just think as long as we continue to do what we do well, we'll always have people coming to us too.
Sure. Well, of course, you've kind of taken mixed harmony to levels that a lot of people haven't, because you actually have experienced the richest kind of mixed harmony of all in your marriage to Jeff Baker, who was a baritone singer of nightlife, also sang with many other quartets, and you all got to enjoy singing together, but then also just the richer harmony of marriage. Tell us a little bit about how you and Jeff met.
We met at the 1988 Men's International in San Antonio, Texas. I had my very first regional champion quartet, and we were going to be going to international that year. And we had a coach who lived in San Antonio. And so we said, wow, we can go get coaching and we can go see the men's finals. We can see, the quartet and chorus finals. So we got in our car and drove over, and for those days that we were there, we might have gone over on Thursday, I don't remember. We got coached, and then we would hang out in the Houston Tidelanders hospitality suite. And I think it was on Saturday night, the last night, of that convention, Jeff's a quartet that really wasn't even active at the time. It was called Bachelor Party, a really popular quartet. They all came to the convention. They were hanging out. They were singing in all the hospitality rooms, and they came to the Houston room. And they sang, and that's where I first laid eyes on Jeff. And my expression was, he was the cutest thing I ever did see. And so I, literally leaped off the couch after they finished singing to go introduce myself to them. And he had already escaped out of the room. I had to climb over a bunch of people to get over to the door. I met Richard Llewellyn at the time. He was talking to one of the Houston guys and started talking to him. And
he was also in...
He was in Bachelor Party. And then Jeff peeked his head back in the room, and Jeff's story is that he saw me talking to Richard, and he was trying to find out where Richard was, and he goes, of course, Richard's talking to a pretty girl. And then he said, he looked at me, and he said the thought popped into his head, I'm going to marry her someday.
Is that right?
It's true. And then he came over, started talking, and then I told him, you're the cutest thing I ever did see, and it was all over. So anyway, we dated long distance. It's a very long saga. We dated long distance.
Because he was in Southern
California. Yeah, for several years. Broke up. I married someone else. That ended. Got back together. Dated long distance. Finally, I called him one day. I said, I'm moving to California. This is ridiculous, And he said, you are. I could just see the fear that's probably flooded his face at the moment. So we did, and then we finally married after. It took us a long time, 15 years of messing around with just not figuring out what we wanted to do, but it was definitely the right.
It was a 15-year love at first sight romance, then, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We were both very hard. Just ask anyone who knows us. But it was wonderful.
That's
great.
It was
a wonderful relationship.
Well, as a lot of us who are in the barbershop world know, back at the end of 2015, Jeff was having some symptoms, maybe stroke-like, but then it turned out to be cancer. And then in 2017, and 1st of March, he passed away. And, a lot of people deal with cancer and the illness of a spouse and even the loss of a spouse, but it is unique to experience those things as part of the barbershop family. And I'd like for you to just talk a little bit about what being a barbershopper and barbershopping, what it meant to you guys, and how it has helped you through this journey that you all had to take together.
I'm going to try to do it without, and I'm not a crier, so. But how it has helped, let me just start with the latter part of that real quick. How it has helped me is that it has been the thing that has kept me going. The barbershop family and barbershop itself. In fact, when Jeff was first diagnosed, he had just come home from the hospital, and the president at the time of Sweet Adelines called me, and they wanted to talk to me about running to be president-elect, because they wanted to see if I was interested in that, which ultimately would mean becoming president. And I basically said at the time, I just don't know if this is something that I can do, because Jeff is so ill. But we talked about it for a while, and I could hear him. He could hear me talking on the phone from the other room saying, do it, do it, do it, because he knew that if this was going to be something very serious, we didn't actually have the diagnosis at the time, but we kind of knew in our heart of hearts, based on how they had been talking to us prior to the biopsy. He knew it was going to be some salvation for me. And it truly was. I tell the story of how Jeff passed away on March 1st. The board meeting for Sweet Adelines is the first weekend in March. And that was a Wednesday. I would have been getting on the plane to go to that board meeting on Thursday. I had missed the October board meeting because of my mother's surgery that she had. If you miss 2 board meetings in a row, you are off the board. You can't miss two board meetings in a row. Passed away on that day, and I took a nap later in the day. And when I woke up, I kind of awoke to the realization of what had happened.
Right.
But then a voice came into my head that said, go to Tulsa. Go to Tulsa. I kept hearing this voice, and I was going, oh, God, I can't go to Tulsa. Go to Tulsa. Kept saying, go to Tulsa. And I thought, oh my God. So I got up, I went over to my family. Gina was there. And I said, I think I'm going to go to Tulsa. Because I could go on Friday. And they all went, yeah, you need to go to Tulsa. And I did. And I know that was Jeff saying to me, go to Tulsa. Because it has been the thing that's been my purpose. Jeff was my purpose in life. He really was. Our relationship was my anchor, my ballast. But he knew that Sweet Adelines was going to be the thing that kept me going, and the work that I was going to be doing now. And it is the thing. It's given me purpose. The people, when we announced his diagnosis, he wanted to tell our friends on Facebook and the barbershop community, because we needed those prayers.
Right. We
needed them. And he continually commented, I just can't believe all this outpouring of love that I'm getting. He was just humble that way. He had no idea the ways that he touched people from his heart in every interaction that he had. They lifted us up through all of the hard times. I cannot tell you the prayers we felt them, the financial support that people provided, the things that they mailed us, prayer shawls, books, all of those things. Just, we felt that love and we felt that support. It is unique, I think, in the world. I don't know any other organization that provides that kind of support to anyone who's going through these things. I think anyone who has ever... I read a letter from some children of a member who passed away that wrote and talked about how the experience of their parent, what it meant to them as children growing up in it, and then how it brought that support and love to them when their parent had passed away. It is unique on this planet. I can't think of another organization that... Even churches. I mean, I think it's beyond even the stuff you get from churches, and we get so much from our churches.
Right.
It's just a love and a family that we are so blessed to enter into, and you have just no idea that it's there.
I know it's in a way when you are in a little subculture like we are as barbershoppers, and you go through something this public. I'm sure there has to be a sense in which sometimes it may feel intrusive, or it may feel like you're just so out there in the eyes of so many people. But the the other side of that equation is what you just said, which is to have that kind of outpouring of support from, in a way, total strangers, but on the other hand, brothers and sisters in harmony, people whose lives have been touched by you guys through the years. And so you got to experience that.
We did, and it made it all bearable. It made it all bearable. Something that is really just completely unbearable. It did make it bearable. It made us get through it, and I was so glad that Jeff got to see, how he changed people's lives just through the way that he was just so generous with his heart, with them, and I'm glad he got to see and feel that in those days. He never got it. He always just thought he was, he always like, I'm no good at that. Yeah, you kind of are really good at making people feel special, and the very unique way that our barbershop family came in and just lifted us up through that is just, we can't thank everyone enough. I don't think I'll ever be able to thank people for the way that they helped him and the way they're still helping me.
There's a video that circulated, and I can't remember now exactly which convention it was, but at the AIC sort of afterglow, the Common started singing the old songs medley, and because of the camera angle, you see Jeff very prominently, and when you watch that video, you just see somebody who loved barbershop.
Oh, through and through.
And as you just said, through the horrible tragedy of this kind of illness, the great thing is that Jeff got to see how much barbershop truly loved him, and you've got to experience that.
It's been such a blessing. I was walking through the hallway here at LGT, through the lobby of the hotel on the way here, and I had a flashback of a memory of him standing in that very spot that I passed, singing tags with Gene Cockcroft. And the other nightlife guys, and I remember that night. I remember taking pictures and videoing that, and how special that was to Jeff to get to sing with his heroes, people like the Boston Common. Oh my God, that just made his entire life. To get to do those things. He was just so richly blessed by barbershop. 12 years old starting, but singing even before then. It was such a huge part of who he was.
It's hard for non-barbershoppers to understand how crazy we get about barbershop, how addicted we are, how obsessed we get. But I really hope if people take some time, non-barbershoppers, to listen to the story that you just told, that help them get some glimpse to understand why this is about so much more than just four people standing and screaming tags at 2 a.m.
It really is. I mean, yes, singing a tag with a chord that's got overtones screaming changes your life. That itself changes your life. But the people, they are good folk.
Great. Well, if people want to learn more about Sweet Adelines International, where do they turn?
SweetAdelines.com. And then we have Sweet Adelines on the Sweet Adelines Facebook page. And we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, all of those things. Don't ask me what the exact handles are. I'm not sure I know them, but you can find them.
Find one, they'll find all.
Yeah, the website's right at the bottom there. They're all there with all those links.
Well, Patty, we wish you the very best in your presidency, Sweet Adelines. We wish Sweet Adelines International the very best. Hope you all have a great convention and a great closeout to the year. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
It's been my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Shop Chat.